We got told a few weeks ago that these greenhouses up at the top aren't really being used by anybody at the moment, so we could make use of them. So we came up yesterday and I noticed one thing that's quite useful is there's a water butt here that had never been used, and it just looked as if it'd be useful to take some water off the roof and feed into the water butt, because there's no water butts here. There's endless compost bins and there's about 1.5 tons of compost. There's loads of plants that have been kind of cultivated but aren't likely to be used and also haven't been very well looked after. But there's no water butt. Well, these are the instructions for the water butt, and there's this hose, and it's obviously meant to stick in the drain pipe from a house, and then there's this outlet here. But obviously we haven't got house drainage, and there's this tap which doesn't seem to have a nut on the end, although there is this nut, and there is also this here, but I think, yeah, this is a much, yeah, the thread on this is for this one, isn't it? So that's the thread for the nut for the hose pipe, and this one doesn't seem to have a nut on it. Well, there's an outlet here which might have something screwed onto the back of it, so I'm going to need to get a spanner that's big enough for that. So I've got a range of, well, one large spanner and some sockets. I think the large spanner isn't really big enough though. That says 24mm. That fits on, it's a little bit loose, is 22mm, and that one doesn't fit. So it's going to be the 24mm. I'll see if I can get that undone. So that's out. It just unscrews, there's no nut on the other end, and it's got a rubber washer which is a little bit split on this end, but I noticed inside there was a spare rubber washer, which I think is the one you're supposed to use with the tap. Actually, I read somewhere that it's a good idea to smear the washer with Vaseline so that when you're tightening the tap it doesn't distort the washer, so the washer can sort of slide underneath the lip of the tap. And I see why they said to do that, because when I was tightening this up, you get the last half turn, it has to be in this position, I can't do it anymore. What was happening was the rubber washer was just bulging out the side, so you have to do the last turn or so really slowly and keep your finger compressing the rubber so that it stays underneath this kind of lip on the tap, so that the washer doesn't kind of pop out the side. And the hose has to go from this guttering here down to one of the holes which has been drilled in the side. So there's one hole here, or there's an alternative one on this side, but to have the tap sticking out the front here, these holes are either going to be up against the greenhouse or quite a long way away, and this hose just, I don't think is going to be long enough. Might just fit if I went to this one down here, but it's really not very long, so I may have to get a longer piece of hose, but you know, 1 inch on the outside. I'm just going to go and compare that with a piece of ordinary hose, and this is a piece of ordinary hose pipe, and it's not as big, the diameter's not anywhere near as big really, so it's definitely a particular size piece of hose that I'm going to need. The other difficulty is that this gutter doesn't have any kind of fixing on it to attach to a hose. But if I come to the other greenhouse, this one does. It's got a fixing at this end, which is obviously to attach a hose to, and at the other end it's got a clip to block off this end to stop water running off this end. So I may take one of these off. Slight problem I found. Firstly, these gutter ends are left and right handed, so they're different on each side, but also a bit more importantly, this cross section, this aluminium extrusion, is different to this cross section, which is circular, so this won't even fit on this end. It's the wrong size, so I'm just going to have to make up something. I did wonder whether I could put the water butt attached to here, and have it down here, but that would mean that the water butt would be on this bit of floor space, which is kind of a bit too close to the entrance. I can't really fit it in this bit of floor space because it's taken up with these bits of crockery which are actually acting as the foundation for this greenhouse. So the water butt is kind of stuck over here, really, and I'm just going to have to make up something to attach to that end and to blank off the other end of that gutter. So it's going to have to leave it for another day, unfortunately.